Louise?
It is live. I am.
Okay. For anyone who's jumped on early, thanks for joining us. We're just getting stuff set up across all the different platforms right now, and we'll give it a couple minutes for people to jump on as well. Just waiting for one more platform to come online. Thank you for anyone who's out there listening. I always feel like these going live at the beginnings are a little awkward for everyone. So if you're with us right now, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. It sounds like we are live everywhere, so I'll probably just get things going and then, oh yeah, it's 6, so we'll get things going and then people can join as they come across the live feed. For those of you that have been following this month, our topic is burnout, and this is kind of the accumulation of the month. So the first week we had a live or recorded interview with someone who spoke about their experience with burnout. The second week we had a video interview with someone who had been the supporter for someone with burnout, and then the third week we were joined by a mental health professional to speak about burnout. And then this being our fourth week in our live Talk It Out session, we are gonna cover all that we touched on this week, and we're going to answer some questions that came in through the month as well. My name is Megs Reynolds. I'm the executive director for the Dumar Agriculture Foundation. We are the national voice and champion for mental health in Canadian agriculture. And joining us today is Louise Sanders. Louise, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so hi, thanks for the introduction. My name is Louise. I am excited to be here. It's always good to just have a conversation, not scripted or anything, just have it out and talk about it. So I started my career as a physical therapist. So I worked in the industry as a physical therapist for 4 years, and I recognized that there was a lot of issues that my patients were coming in that were more than physical. And so I did more research and learning and found out about stress. Long and short of it, that's the short story, is I found out about stress and how stress is a major contributing factor to any illness, disease, condition, imbalance, and really plays a huge role in our happiness. So I did more learning about that. And so I have a background now in not only physical therapy, but in Bowen therapy, laser therapy, neurolinguistic programming, acupuncture, and the Institute of Heart Math, as I'm a trainer in heart math, and positive psychology. There's a few things. So the Enneagram personality system. So I combine all of that. I do trainings for groups or organizations, or even the government. I have a contract with the government of Manitoba. So I also do individuals. So people that come into my office, or I meet virtually with them, and I give them the tools and the skills and help them develop strategies to conquer stress.
Amazing. I was going to say, you're bringing an awful lot to the table tonight, so thank you. I loved how you touched on like how you kind of got into it and how you started seeing that connection between, it's not just the stress that we experience that kind of lives in its own box over here, how it affects us in our day-to-day. I ran or did a presentation earlier today with Alberta Milk. And that was one of the big things that I was trying to get across, is that, our mental health and our health, physical health, are very interconnected, whether one, is affecting the other. And that when we have stress in our lives, it lives in our body. So if we don't find a way to deal with it or to let it out, that it could be living in us and manifest in different ways. And I have developed a system where I check in on myself. I don't even know how many times a day, but to see like, what am I doing? Because I'll get my shoulders up by my ears and I'm holding stress. And if I don't do that, I get to the point where I have so much pain between my shoulder blades, because I'm just like, my muscles are so tight and so locked up because they're just trying to hold all of that stress, and I haven't been releasing it throughout the day. So I love that that's kind of the connection that you made and what brought you to on the journey that you're on, and now how you're helping people and working with stress.
Yeah. And like I said, it, like being a physical therapist, it really felt like I was putting a Band-Aid on and really working on the end result, and we all say this, in our conversations, like, oh, I'm so stressed, I feel it in my shoulders, or I feel it in my stomach or my lower back. Let's work on the stress then. Mm-hmm. So in my introduction, I forgot to mention, I was raised on a farm. So farming is in my background. So I'm super excited to be here and answer your questions and talk about it. So
that's great. And that's so helpful too. And I know for anyone out there that's joined us so far, that's going to watch later, knowing that someone has that connection or that background in agriculture really helps them feel more comfortable with the content. And then also just, if you're face-to-face, have that conversation, right? It can be hard to open up and have a conversation with someone if they don't know anything about the industry, because there is so much unique to farming and to those in agriculture.
Yes. Absolutely.
Let's get started with maybe some of the basics. So I think this is an important place to start too after the pandemic. We're trying to do everything from home. We're talking about burnout. But I think there's probably a scale of where I can be like, oh, I'm so burnt out after a long week, but that's not the same as like having, being at a place where you could be diagnosed with like clinical burnout.
Right. Just to make it completely clear, I'm not technically a mental health professional. I just work in the coaching, counseling industry. So I'm just going to be completely out there and honest about that. So when it comes to diagnoses and stuff like that, that's not my role. Mm-hmm. But what I do is I teach people the skills to prevent the burnout or come back from burnout. So to actually ask, what is burnout? I'm going to take a few steps back. I want to talk about like burnout is like the end result of, it's kind of like a linear scale here. So burnout is like the end result. But before that's chronic stress, and before that is stress. So I want to talk about stress. I want to talk about what stress really is and what resilience is, and then we're going to lead it up to burnout and what that is. So stress is actually, it's a physiological disharmony. It's a chaos that happens on the inside as a result of a negative emotion to your perception of your life situation. Okay. So there's a few pieces to that. When we perceive something in a certain way, then we're going to have an emotional response to it. So like if you look at, if you look at rain, for example, as farmers, like rain could be great or rain could be bad. Yeah. Right. So your perception is going to change the way you're going to feel about it. You can be all, miserable, like, oh my gosh, we have a crop to get in and it's raining and it's, October, November, and like, we don't have time for this. And it's really stressing you out because it's raining. Mm-hmm. So you're stressed out because your emotion is fear and anxiety. Mm-hmm. So that you feel that disharmony on the inside. On the other hand, your perception of it raining could be, that's great. It's been like a dust bowl and we need to get the seeds germinating, like we need the rain. And so you can get all excited and happy because it's raining. Your perception is different for the same event. And it's going to completely change the biochemistry, the autonomic nervous system is going to change completely every system of your body because your emotional response to your perception. So when we have a negative emotion or a depleting emotion to a perception of our life situation, that causes that chaos. It can be short-lived or it can be chronic stress. So we're going forward here. As we have that chronic stress is like, I have so much to do. I've got, cows to feed and cows to calve and got, the farming and the seeding is going to be coming up and it's just crappy snow. Sorry. There's lots of snow out there, and just, you don't have, you just have so much to do. It's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps going and going and going. Then you have chronic stress. Now, chronic stress can keep going and going and going, and that turns to burnout. So the burnout is really a result of a drained inner battery. So stress drains our inner battery, which is really, when you think of inner battery, we obviously don't have an inner battery. I haven't found any cord to plug in to charge up.
I wish.
I wish it was that easy. But when we look at resilience is our emotion, is our inner battery. So that's the easiest way to think about resilience, because resilience is your capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, and adversity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the definition of resilience from the Institute of Heart Math. And the most important part there is to look at capacity. So you can build capacity. You can store you can store energy, just like a battery in your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep using your inner battery without charging it, you end in burnout. A dead battery, if you will, or it's blinking red, it's like low power mode. You need low power mode. So that's what happens with burnout, is that you have like chronic stress is like 50% of your battery. These aren't technical numbers, but like 50% of your battery, and burnout is like your cell phone telling you you're at 10, 5. You have very low energy. That means low resilience. And so we talk about resilience, and resilience is like the thing that we're trying to get, because with more resilience, we're better able to handle challenge and prepare for challenge and adapt in challenge.
And I think too, like, I'm just going to jump in, but in agriculture, we, especially as farmers, we pride ourselves on having resilience.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is we don't have great resilience right now. Like the 2021 statistics from the University of Guelph found that 83% of Canadian farmers have lower resiliency scores than the US general population. And for me, that speaks directly to the battery you're talking about. We're living at this like chronic stress level with everything that's going on. We don't know how to recharge our batteries. We don't know the science to look for that our battery is blinking on like that 25% or 10% mode. And we're just carrying on without looking or thinking about stuff because that's what we're supposed to do, or that's, with that stigma in mental health. Or we're just not even realizing it because we've spent so much of our life at that point that that's our normal.
That's right. And the one thing that characterizes burnout from just chronic stress and just like lots of stress, burnout comes with hopelessness and helplessness. So burnout is almost, it's slightly different than chronic stress in the fact that it's a state of mental, emotional, physical exhaustion. Like it's like very exhausted, where you're feeling overwhelmed, you're emotionally drained, you're unable to meet the constant demands. And farmers can totally relate to this. And that's that resilience, the inner battery that's depleted. But again, it's the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness that kind of characterize burnout compared to just stress.
Mm-hmm. I found I was preparing to do a presentation touching on like burnout in January. And I was going through old videos on my phone from when I was farming and when I was making videos. And I found a video from 2018, and we were like in the middle of, we'd had about 3 bad years with like weather not cooperating on a grain farm, commodity prices being low. I had at that time 2 kids around 2 and 3, and I'm in the barn with my horses and I'm crying. And I'm basically hiding from my children. My husband at the time was with my kids, and I'm crying because I feel like a horrible mom. I feel like a failure. I'm quick to react with my children because I'm just exhausted and I'm not emotionally in a good place. And so I feel like my family's better if I'm not in the house with them. And then I'm talking about how I feel like I've given everything I've have to farming and that it's just not enough and I don't have anything else to give. And for me, like coming back on that video and, now fast forwarding to it being 2023 and the work I've done on myself and with what I know from, being with Do More and the other things is like, wow, that's where I was. Like I was in burnout at that time.
Yes. And you brought up a good point. One of the signs and symptoms of burnout is that feeling of, that self-doubt and the like not the worthlessness, that's not the word I'm looking for, but the self-doubt and I have a list here. I wanted to make sure I go over all the signs and symptoms. What is the word I'm looking for?
But that worthlessness, like find the word, but that, yeah, failure, that, and we do that as farmers, right? Like we attach our sense of self-worth to our ability to be, successful on farm as a farmer, a rancher, a producer. And so when we're not, even if it's a hailstorm or commodity prices or disease or something else, then we do, like, our self-worth is affected, and we do feel like we're worth less, or that we failed as that person we're supposed to be with that identity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I can see that. But yeah, so some of the signs and symptoms of burnout like include, I'm just gonna like read them. Okay. Like dreading work or taking longer to get things done that you used to get done, and now it's just taking longer. Isolating yourself from other people, like what you were saying, getting out of the house and like, I'm just better away from people. Trouble sleeping. Depression and irritability, like what you were saying, like I'm just nasty to them.
Yeah.
The frequent illnesses. So it's really not surprising to get frequent illnesses with burnout, because stress decreases your immune system function. So now you're more prone to, infections and bacteria and viruses and all that. So, but yeah, illnesses for sure. Reduced production. So reduced productivity and reduced performance, muscle pain, headaches, that sense of failure and self-doubt that we were talking about, but feeling cynical and having a negative outlook, withdrawing from responsibilities. You didn't mention this, but it's possible that some people would think, okay, like I'm not taking care of my kids anymore, I'm just gonna, or leaving the horses in the barn and never feeding them, like that kind of thing. Just a loss of motivation, feeling helpless, trapped, or defeated. Procrastination, and sometimes using substances, not just alcohol and drugs, but also food.
Yes.
Food is like our go-to, more accepted form of numbing.
I would say phones too now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We're at that day and age where it's like, I'm just gonna doom scroll on my phone for a while. That's my escape, and I don't want to be in the current reality.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so some things you might, like I was trying to think to actually notice it in someone else, because some of these are very subjective, but to notice it in someone else. Like if you notice someone that's withdrawing, where they would go to normal, like they would, talk with you or hang with you or whatever. And now they're not, that's one sign. And again, like looking at procrastination, like that person, if you know them well, that person's skills, what they're good at, what they like, if they start pulling back from what they like, if they start taking longer to do what they used to do, those are kind of things you can watch for with burnout in another person as well.
Yeah, I think like that pulling back too can be seen online. Like if someone's super active on social media and suddenly they're not posting, or they're not commenting and liking, and that can be a sign that something's going on too. Yeah, absolutely. Or it could be a sign that they're trying to have less of the scrolling and the posting and the going back to simplifying life. Yes, for sure. One of my boundaries that I've created is I have all my social media notifications turned off. Oh, nice. That ran my life for a long time and created stress or just like feelings of being anxious. And so, they're turned off, and I can go in there when I want to on my terms. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. If how is the best way to, because I feel like with some of this stuff, it can be really gradual. So it can be harder for like the individual experiencing it to notice things, because, it kind of slowly happens. Like I think probably a lot of people can relate that during the pandemic, they probably started drinking more alcohol than they wanted to. And it wasn't just that they, went from this is my normal consumption to here is where I'm at, but it was like that, over a year and a half, like that gradual increase. So how do we try to be aware, present in our day-to-day to start notice these things if they can be more of kind of that gradual build up or slow burn? Yeah, it's a good question. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with like, how can we be more aware? We have to increase our awareness and with practice. Yeah.
And like you said, like, I don't know how many times in a day I check in with like how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
So not only, and this is where it was, a shift for me from a physical therapist point of view to what I do now, more working with emotions and how emotions can change the physical body. So I'm not only interested in, and I'm not only suggesting that you check in with like how your muscle tension is. I'm talking like, how are you feeling?
Mhm.
Farmers are very good at checking the weather reports. Like how many times you check a weather in the day, right?
Yeah.
Not so much now, but like in certain seasons, you're definitely checking the weather. Like you got to see what's on the horizon and got to plan your day. We can do an inner weather report. Like, is it stormy? Is there a storm brewing? Is there, like what is our emotional state? Because we are constantly feeling an emotion. You can never shut off an emotion. That means you are constantly influencing the way your autonomic nervous system functions, the way that your physiology is functioning. So you're either driving it to drain energy or you're either driving it to gain energy. Now, driving it to lose energy and just blow it is fear, anxiety, worry, grief, sadness, sense of failure, sense of disappointment, not meeting our own expectations, or meeting other people's expectations. All of those feelings create this disharmony on the inside that creates that stress. So really what I tell people is to turn up your sensitivity to stress. People will be like, no, you got to be more tolerant. I say turn it. No, be less tolerant. The more that you can be, by being less tolerant, you become more aware. When we become more tolerant, we can handle a lot before we notice something wrong. If we turn up turn down our tolerance level and turn up our sensitivity, we start to notice things faster. We start to feel something when it's a small problem or when it's a small imbalance compared to when it's a big imbalance. Like, well, I thought I could just push through.
Yeah.
But if you can recognize these early storms brewing on the horizon, instead of being in the hurricane, you can actually do some tools to prevent that. And one of those tools is really simply heart focused breathing, for example, where you're focusing your attention in the area of your heart and just imagining your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or the chest area, just in your body. Get it out of your head and into your body. And your heart is perfect for that. So as you're breathing a little slower and deeper through your heart, you're just going to just keep your attention in there. Keep your focus in there. And what that does is it breaks the mental emotional chatter loop, like, oh man, I'm such a failure. Yeah, I'm a failure. And then you feel more of a failure. And then see, I'm feeling like a failure. So I'm definitely a failure. It just feeds each other. So by bringing your attention to your heart, it actually breaks that loop, helps you be more grounded, helps you be more present, and helps you be more aware of what's not just in your internal environment, but also in your external environment.
Mm-hmm.
Looking different, from a different perspective to find different solutions to your problems, to the issues that you might, how to get help or a different way of doing things, instead of like, well, this is the way I've always done it. And this is the way my daddy did it. So we're going to keep doing it. It's like, maybe there's a different way, just because your dad never hired help doesn't mean you can't hire help.
Mm-hmm.
Be open to different options and different solutions.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking, one of the things I kind of created my own question, because I talk a lot about we are so quick to move on, and I know that can be really important with farming. And the phrase "there's always next year" exists for a reason. I really struggle with that phrase, but is there a line, or where do we, your points on not dwelling on something and how those emotions can feed us or kind of drain us, when something does happen and we have those feelings of loss or grief or anger? What's the best way to go? Because we need to process them. We can't just shove them down, which is what we've been doing for a long time. So how do we know when we're processing them or when we're just sitting in them?
That's a good question, because it's going to be different for everyone. And it requires, again, with more awareness, you'll know your and honesty and self-honesty. Because one of the things I talk about with clients is the most dangerous thing to do is justify.
Right.
I have every right to be nervous, or I have every right to worry because I have so much crop lying out there yet, and it's going to rain, or it's windy, and my canola is blowing away, whatever, and the pods are shattering, whatever the case is. Like, I have every right to be. And when we do that, all we're doing is we're trying to justify our energy drain. And that actually creates more of an energy drain, and it doesn't actually help anything.
Mm-hmm.
Does my negative emotional state of anger or frustration actually stop the grain from shattering? I'm just like, no, it doesn't. Does it stop the storm from coming? No, it doesn't.
Not in your control.
It's not in your control. So to further your point, how do you recognize that these emotions are there? Like, what do you do with them? A huge part of it is to accept that you're human, accept that you have negative emotions, accept it as a flavor, a texture to life. And it's almost counterintuitive, because it's like, well, if I accept it, that means I'm just going to have more of it. It's actually, you're going to have less of it, because you've given yourself space and opportunity and what's the word I'm looking for? Compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And with that space, opportunity, and compassion, you have a loving acceptance. And with that, your energy can flow, can shift, can change. If you constantly resist that feeling, or resist it, or push it down, it actually persists. So whatever you resist persists. So
whatever you resist, the bumper sticker.
Yeah, there you go. So if you accept it, it's counterintuitive, but then you're given the space and the breath to just allow it to be. And all it needs to do, it's almost like a kid. And I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews. So I've seen, like, I have lots of them, over 20. So I've seen them like, mom, 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 mom. And all they want is for their mom to look at them. And they're like, okay, and that's it. And that's really what our emotions want, is just to be like, hey, I have something to say. And when we accept that they're there, it gives it the space to move on.
Yeah, so, like validate over justify. So
yeah,
validate, I'm allowed to feel this. This is what I'm feeling. This is okay. And I get to feel it, process it, and then it can kind of complete that cycle.
Yes. And so there really is no time frame. There's no, and it comes down to self-honesty of am I justifying this feeling? Am I saying that it's helping me? Am I every right to feel this way? That guy's a jerk, so I have every right to throat punch him. It's just to really check in and be honest. What is it that I'm feeling, and to be okay with feeling it, because acceptance. Once you accept the feeling that you're, that negative feeling that you're feeling, you're no longer feeling the negative feeling. You're feeling acceptance. Which in and of itself is a renewing emotion. It's going to charge your inner battery.
I like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So when I've almost stopped, I hardly ever say self-maintenance now, or sorry, self-care, because of how that can be perceived with, within agriculture, with, farmers. And it's like, well, that's fluffy and I don't want bubble baths and they're not going to help me. So I switched to self-maintenance, and I talk about it I used to grain farm. So, before harvest, we're going to get the combines out and we're going to go through them. We're going to make sure that, anything that might be about to belts rip or bearings go or anything else, it's going to be changed, so that the second that machine gets in the field, it's in peak performance for where we can get it, hoping that it's going to, do the best that it can throughout that season. And I feel like self-maintenance, we need to think of ourselves the same way. So it's no different than charging the cell phone battery. But what can we do, and how do we figure out what works for us for self-maintenance? And being aware of okay, my battery's getting low, I need to do something. And I think also understanding that we can maybe put a little extra effort into knowing that we're going to go into those seasons. So, prior to we're getting into, seeding and planting, and so prior to getting into that season, what can we do self-maintenance on ourselves, PDI ourselves, to be in the most fully charged? Maybe we have an extra battery pack ready to go into that season. Do you have any recommendations for people on how to figure out what those self-maintenance things could be for themselves, or how to yeah, I guess get yourself into the best place you could be before going into some of those more demanding seasons. Because I mean, the reality with farming is, we can't always get 8 hours of sleep, and we can't always do the things that would be recommended elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking about this for farmers, because farmers is interesting. It's almost like they have 2 Olympic games a year. And this is the coming of the spring 2023 Olympic Games. Because what we want to do is we want to be in peak performance, like what you said. So this spring, the seeding planting is the 2023, spring Olympic Games. So if you have to look at it like an athlete does, they don't just quit once the Olympics are over, right? They keep going, they train, they practice, they keep going. So especially if they're preparing for the next Olympics, which we're going to do for the fall. So what that means is training is to constantly it's a skill. Self-awareness is a skill. So train that skill. Just like I suck at sports, and I don't know sports analogies at all, or I use sports analogies, but I don't know sports. So if you're going to practice your soccer skills, you're going to be a soccer player, you're not just going to practice those skills on game day, right? You're going to practice them before that, when the pressure's off. And so that on game day, you have those skills. You know how to hit that ball, how to I guess it's kick it, whatever. you know how to do that. So really, I think what's important to know, maybe not, we still have some time for seeding and planting this year, is to start checking in with yourself, start that self-regulation. And every time that you see that you are experiencing a depleting emotion, overwhelm, fear, anxiety, worry, anger, frustration, any little time, change that emotion, recognize it, acknowledge it, accept that it's part of the human experience. And then it's not suppression. It's actually choosing to disengage from the emotion, not because it's bad or it's wrong to feel that way, but because it doesn't help you. It doesn't support you. It's not the most effective use of your energy. Just like being angry at the weather doesn't make the weather change. So it's not an effective use of your energy. So keep that energy by doing like a heart focused breathing technique that I shared earlier. That can help. It's been proven, scientifically proven, to work in keeping your energy, in charging your energy, in shifting your emotion, not suppressing it, but disengaging from it. It's like, it's not serving me. It's not helping me. So disengage from that and choose a more renewing emotion. So the more you practice that, the more you're going to increase your awareness, which is a skill. And the more you're actually practicing self-regulation. That is going to charge your inner battery. That means instead of starting your Olympics of this 2023 with 50% of your battery charge, you're going to start it with 90. Now you're going to be able to go longer, harder, and you're going to have more resilience to start out. Now, what you can do within that season to keep your inner battery charged is, definitely huge is keep track of your emotions. Like, keep on top of them. Anytime there's a little drain, a little frustration, shift it. Just like it adds up big time. Like if you were to leave your interior light on in your car overnight, it's just a little light bulb. What does it do?
Yeah.
Right? It drains your car battery. It will be dead in the morning. Unless you have one of those new cars, like the newer cars, it turns off every 15 minutes or something, whatever. But okay, so my analogy still stands. But yeah, so all those little drains add up big time. So if it's just a little bit of frustration because there's dirty dishes on the counter, or that you missed your favorite TV show, or whatever the case is, that little frustration, that little irritation, that little worry is going to add up. So definitely check your emotions. That is like number one. Number two, get the sleep you need when you can. Get it when you can, because I get it. In seeding and in harvest, in your Olympics, you don't. I get that, but get it when you can, because I know, like for me, there's times that I can go to bed earlier, but I end up looking at my emails and I look at social media and I bring the phone to bed, and no, you are training for the Olympics here. Like you are training, you're an athlete, you're a top athlete. You are a farmer, for crying out loud. You are feeding the world. You have a job to do and it's important. So train for it, right? Be serious about it. So get the sleep you can when you can. That's really recharging your battery. The other thing is to have food that is actual real food. Again, you're a farmer. You make food. So this food is not like, hungry man meals, and it's not fast takeout food, fruits, vegetables. This fuels your body.
Mhm.
Again, you're an athlete. Treat yourself like one. You don't see an athlete, every once in a while they can go for food or, like for a restaurant and eat chips and whatever. But on the, on the whole, they treat their body like the $1 million machine it is. We treat our combines better than we treat our bodies.
Yeah.
So fuel it with, top grade fuel. If you want it to keep working, you're not going to give your combine watered down fuel. So don't fill your body with food that's full of not food.
I know protein can be really good too. Like for usually we're not eating enough protein just in general, but especially for immune systems and keeping our bodies from like being healthy through those more challenging times.
Yeah. So and prepare for that. Like,
Mm.
that there's going to be, many days that comes up. Well, then cut your carrots and get them in a bag. And then,
Yeah.
be prepared for the food that you're going to be eating. And I think social networks, strong friendships, strong family, strong community, working on those relationships throughout the year, because they're going to be strained when you're strained. Right. So if you can foster them and strengthen them, and because they're important, research shows that they're important for your level of stress, your social networks, your spiritual life. Prayer has been proven to decrease stress, improve those positive feeling hormones and biochemicals and your chemistry on the inside. All of that changes with prayer and meditation. So, people are like, oh, I don't have time to meditate. Well, most, not all of them, but most tractors now have GPS and auto steer. You have a whole mile to meditate, to think of something and to feel something other than the pressure you're putting on yourself. Like, okay, so let's calculate how long this field is going to take. How many times do you have to calculate it?
Yeah.
Every strip that you're doing, you're already calculating, okay, like how much time am I right? Am I, like, are we going to get done this field? Are we, tonight? Or just to check in with how you're feeling and to really use the time while you're on that tractor, or while you're running to get the seed, or while you're not running. Most people drive. But while you're doing that, this is stuff to do on the go. So the tools that I teach, heart focused breathing is one of them that I shared, is meant to be used on the go. You don't have to do it sitting down. It's a checking in. Just like it doesn't take you any time to feel fear or any time to feel anxious. You can do that on the go. You can do tools on the go to change and shift that emotion to something that's going to serve you instead of disserve you.
Yeah, I thought about that when you first started talking about it, like how like breathing and different things, like you can do those anywhere. Like that's not something that you don't have an excuse to say, I'm too busy right now, I can't do that, right? I can't shut down and go have a walk or go take a break or do whatever. Well, you can work on breathing or focus on being present, maybe focus on watching the hawks after the mice in the field instead of focusing on the monitors or what have you. And I think too, like boundaries can come into this a little bit as well. So maybe if there is something that's weighing on you or that's adding to those emotions that are draining emotions that you're feeling, well, can you do something about it so that it's not really front of mind? I remember when you're in a severe drought, I actually put a piece of electrical tape over the yield monitor on my screen because I knew it sucked. I didn't need to sit and see it like every single second and then run the numbers and keep going down that like death spiral of negativity. Or social media. If you're having a hard time with maybe weather or something going on in your operation, maybe don't go online, right? If people are posting about how good, their crops are, or they're getting the rains or they're whatever, maybe that's a boundary that you can create that helps you just not bring that emotion in to begin with, or not add on to what you're already feeling.
And turn off the news on the
Yeah.
radio.
Yeah.
Turn it off. It's not serving you. You have, it's almost like another technique is to decrease, like shrink your world, shrink it to something that's manageable.
Mhm.
Instead of, like, oh my gosh, and in India, this is happening, or in wherever, Ukraine, whatever. It doesn't matter right now.
Mhm.
Like right now, right here is what matters. So if you can shrink your world, it suddenly feels like the pressure's off, because it does that stuff you can't control anyway.
Yeah.
Right here, right now.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Sorry,
if
go
you,
ahead.
no, I was just going to say one thing that I have it written down here, and I want to make sure I mention it, is to check where the pressure is coming from. When we feel that stress and that strain, check where it's coming from. Is it the actual weather, or is it, the pressure that you're putting on yourself? Is it like, I got to do this right. I got to do it the best. I got to do it the fastest. I have to be the first.
Mhm.
All of those things, those expectations that we have in it, or I have to do better than dad.
The neighbors in their field, we haven't started yet.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's to recognize where the pressure is actually coming from, and it's coming, more than likely is coming from you.
Yeah.
So you probably have more control on your level of stress than what we care to admit.
Mhm.
But it sucks, because it's like, well, that was what's motivating me, or that's the way I've always done it.
Yeah.
But it's actually super empowering, because just imagine if you can if you can decrease all this pressure, you're going to
Mhm.
feel so much better, and you're going to prevent burnout. You're going to decrease stress, all from just checking where the pressure is coming from.
Mhm. What do you recommend for people, say it's a family member that I work, farm with, live with, and they're the one that's more experiencing this? How do I best support? Like, is it to remind them of like breathing or different pieces, or make sure they have the good food, or like what are the ways that I could support in that? Yeah.
Well, you definitely hit two on the head. Provide them food. That's great. But I think being vulnerable with them, being
Mhm.
honest and open with them, telling them, like letting them know that you also have a hard time,
Yeah.
or that you've been there, or what that feels like. And being vulnerable first, to open up that topic.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how powerful vulnerability is, and how much of a gift it is when you can be vulnerable and you can share either an experience you've had, or a feeling you've had, or a place, where you've been, and how that just suddenly creates that safe place for them to be like, okay, I don't have to hide this, or what I'm feeling is, not unique to me. Like I'm not just kind of on my own island with this. And how what I found too is, like, even if you're the one that's maybe feeling some feelings that you need to work out, but if you can phone that friend and do it in a way where it's like, hey, if we look at last year, at seeding, planting, we had fertilizer prices spike, fuel prices spike, and like maybe you're really overwhelmed and feeling these feelings that are draining, and it's like, well, I'm going to call my friend and I'm going to check in on her and see how she's doing, and say, hey, this is going on, this is going on, this is how I'm feeling, how are you doing? And so I'm being vulnerable. I'm opening up the conversation. I really need to have the conversation, but I'm doing it in a way that's like maybe a little more comfortable to me, because I'm not saying, hey, I'm kind of struggling right now. Can you talk?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then one thing to like, that's excellent. And my word of caution is to not vent in the way, like venting in the way I talk about it. Venting is like building each other up in how
Right.
sucky life is.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, that fuel price, and oh this and that.
Right.
And then you end up hanging up the phone and you feel worse, because all you did was talk about all the shit that's happening.
Yeah.
Right. But there's again, it comes to that emotional honesty, and it comes to the connection that you're really trying to create, is this common humanity. And if you can be like, yeah, doesn't that suck? Oh, that sucks. Well, it'll be better, or we'll get through this, or we'll get through it together. or, instead of like what I said, building each other up to a point of actually taking each other down to a point that life sucks.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's a good way of looking at it. I have some friends and they'll, if I call up and I say like, oh, this just happened and this is what I'm feeling, their first question is usually like, you need to vent, or are we going to look for solutions right now? Like, where are you at?
And there's nothing wrong with like one person
Releasing.
and saying what's going on. But it's to have that other person be that open container to be like, okay, whatever you want to tell me, I'm listening. Doesn't mean I'm going to say you're wrong, or doesn't mean I'm going to try to fix it, or doesn't mean I'm going to give you advice. It's just, here's your open container.
Mm-hmm.
And fill it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not going to add more to it,
Right. Yeah. I like that. There's the massive difference there, right? Between, yes. Okay. Like, yeah, just let it out. I'm here to take it in versus, yeah, but did you hear this? And
yeah. And adding,
I think it's actually worse than what you're saying right now.
Yeah. Or topping your story. Like, oh man, I'm doing really hard today. Well, you should have heard me like 2 weeks ago. And then you just try to, no, try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Topping each other's misery is not really the way to get better.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you had like in your notes, or like that you really wanted to make sure people heard or were exposed to tonight?
Yeah, I think I've covered everything. And again, I'm just going to highlight that awareness is a skill. It takes practice, but it is one that is huge. It's monumental. It can be completely life changing. And I'm not saying that like as a cliche, I mean it. It can totally change your life. With the more awareness you have, regulating your emotions, you're going to save energy. And when you save energy, you have more energy to spend on what you love to do, whether it's farming or whether it's the vacation you get to take in the winter, whatever it is, you're going to have more energy to do it.
Yeah. And we're all at different points on our journeys, and we're all learning. Like life is, we're constantly learning, we're growing, we're improving. So don't think like, oh, I'm not at a place where I'm self-aware, or I know that's something I need to be better at. Like this is a process. Like after 2018, when I made that video, like this is something I've been like consciously working on since then. I'm still working on it, right? Like I think it's something that we can always be improving on, and just like give ourselves grace when stuff does happen. Of like, okay, next time, how do I better go about this, or how can I approach this? But being able to create that kind of grace and space for ourselves to keep learning and growing on our own unique journeys. Yeah,
we're being a lifelong student of ourselves.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
We're constantly growing.
Oh, sorry.
I just said to constantly grow and change and to learn about ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered everything I had on my page. So for those of you that joined us online, thank you very much for joining us. There is going to be, this has been recorded, so this will be posted on YouTube and shared on our socials after. For anyone looking for more information, they can come to our website, which is domore.ag. You can reach out to us through our website. You can find resources on our website. You can learn more about anything that has to do with mental health for the most part. You can also donate there if you're looking to support mental health and agriculture. Louise, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So much incredible, so many takeaways tonight, like so much valuable information. So thank you.
Awesome.